Hello everyone, thank you for coming to my speech. My name is Carrie Lee, and let me introduce you to my audience before we begin. Okay, let's get started. So today my speech is on schizophrenia, the importance of mental health, and how mental illnesses were treated and diagnosed in the past. Schizophrenia and mental health are largely misunderstood due to the lack of knowledge about them both and also the lack of conversation amongst people. So hopefully today after my video that will change. So basically, schizophrenia is a serious mental illness that changes the way people act, feel, and think, basically. Contrary to what people believe due to movies and magazines changing the actual facts, people that have schizophrenia are not violent. They do not mean you harm, or usually they don't mean harm to themselves. So if you are ever in the presence of someone with schizophrenia, you should not worry about your safety. People with schizophrenia usually are battling other mental disorders such as anxiety and depression, so you should always keep that in mind when encountering someone with schizophrenia. Signs and symptoms for schizophrenia are always different due to every body is different. So it can be slowly over time the signs and symptoms start showing up, or it can be very abrupt. So you always need to be on the lookout for those changes. 1% of the entire population has schizophrenia, and out of that 1%, a majority of the individuals with schizophrenia are males. Unfortunately, there is no cure to rid an individual of schizophrenia because there's really no true cause. There are many similarities in individuals that have schizophrenia, but there's no one topic. The main treatment plans for schizophrenia is counseling and prescribed antipsychotics. Unfortunately, the death rate for schizophrenic people are 20 years less than average due to suicides. In 2015, 17,000 deaths were linked with mental illnesses such as schizophrenia, and most of the deaths occurred because of a suicide. Now that I have touched base with you on the basics of schizophrenia, I'm going to move into the importance of mental health and give you some examples of mental illnesses. What is mental health? Basically, mental health affects how we think, act, and feel, very similar to the effects of schizophrenia. It talks about how we handle stress, relate to others, and how we act in given situations. A common example of a mental illness is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It's very common in soldiers and rape victims. It's caused because of a severe traumatic experience that has a lasting effect on one's memory. Another example of a mental illness is impulse control disorders. Two very common ones are pyromania and kleptomania. For those of which you don't know what those are, pyromania is the impulse control that wants to start fire. It's very dangerous, but kleptomania, on the other hand, isn't as dangerous. They are people who like to steal items. And when they steal the items, it's not necessarily for financial gain. It's just because they lack impulse control. How to help someone that is struggling with mental health or that already has a diagnosed mental illness. Firstly, know the nature of the illness if they are already got their diagnosis, so you can help them in the best way possible. Know what to say and what not to say. Know how to act and how not to act around them. Also, showing your support is a major key to how they think and how they feel about themselves, because they will know with your support that they feel loved and cared for. And lastly, do not treat them as they are if they're sick or defective, because most of the time they already know that they have a mental illness because they're usually going through counseling or taking medication. So if you give them the equality factor that they need, it will help them tremendously on how they think and perceive themselves. Now that I have finished up talking to you about mental health and mental illnesses, I'm going to move on to how mental illnesses were diagnosed and treated in the past. If you had a mental illness or were struggling with mental health, you were thought to be possessed, under a curse, or you were a witch. So you were normally locked away and didn't have any interaction with the public. Hebrews thought that illnesses were God's wrath. So if you were someone who was struggling with mental illness, you were a very, very, very bad sinner. So they would take you to priest doctors and perform exorcisms on you until they thought you were better. Another example of a mental illness treatment is something called trepanning. Trepanning is when a doctor puts a hole in your skull because they thought it was a way to release the demons or evil spirits that have taken over your mind. This is an example of a trepanning. You can see the instrument that is being used for his skull, and he's clearly enjoying that. And then this is a found skull with evidence of a trepanning 3 times. So I don't know the backstory, but obviously 3rd time's a charm. In conclusion, I want you to take what you've learned from my video today and use it the best you can and to the best of your ability, because you have no idea that how you can affect somebody in a positive way. You can save someone's life if you have the right tools and information behind you. So thank you so much for watching my video, and I hope you learned something about mental illness today. Thanks!